Boys and girls, ladies and germs, welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast. I hope I'm catching you at the end of another fantastic week. Hope you've had some big wins. If I've not caught you on a wave of optimism, then today is definitely going to give you that. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by the wonderful Paul Coombs, the mastermind behind Drawn by Fire blog. Paul is a classically trained artist, award-winning illustrator, and firefighter EMT. That's right, this unlikely combination has made Paul one of the most compelling and distinctive illustrators in America today. Paul first burst onto the scene with a refreshing new style that married classic realism and manic energy. He has a zany imagination for the caricatures, and he has lavishly detailed his illustrations and published them worldwide, newspapers, magazines, print, online, and he's even done his own books. Some of these politically charged editorial cartoons have been syndicated worldwide by so many publicists. The big piece of authenticity for us today is that Paul is a 24-year veteran of the fire service, and today we get an inside look at the man behind the masterpieces. I think you're going to be blown away by how hilarious, gregarious, interesting, funny, playful, imaginative, and pretty damn charming Paul is as today's guest. Once again, from me, it is a pleasure to have you with us. I feel blessed to have your ears gracing the podcast once again. I do not take this responsibility lightly, and we have served up an absolute beauty for you today. But before we get in there with Paul, let's hear from our podcast family. It's our silent soldiers, our partners of the podcast. First up, we have PBI Performance Products. PBI products are protection without compromise. Now, PBI fabrics have been renowned for their unique combination of flame resistance, durability, and comfort. I have worn PBI products since starting my career 13 years now, and they are the very first choice in protection for pretty much every extreme condition, from NASA astronauts to emergency responders, the military, Formula One. So it goes without saying we are a massive fan of PBI, and it's great to have them as a fan and a sponsor of the podcast. If you want to hear more about it, go over to pbiproducts.com or just check in the notes below. You will find a link to PBI. A big thanks once again to our long-term sponsor, William Wood Watches, who bring us, of course, our Chivalrous Collection, Bronze Edition, Valiant Collection, and coming to 2021 from the 1st of March is their new Triumph Collection. William Wood Watches is a UK-based watch manufacturer where upcycling is taken to a whole new level. William Wood are all about history on your wrist and feeling the beat of the fire service with you every step of the way. William Wood Watches has the vision to be the leading sustainable watch brand that upcycles rescue service materials for a new life, once forgotten, now reborn. Johnny always says the best part of the journey for him was seeing the watches on the wrists of people who appreciate the story, the history, the values. If you want to become part of the William Wood Watches family, head over to williamwoodwatches.com, where Johnny and the team have some beautiful, beautiful pieces to share with us. So get over, have a look, get yourself registered, and check out some of the incredible stuff at williamwoodwatches.com. Now, are you the sort of person that wants to be in there, in the know, first thing? Then if you want to hear about enhanced limited time offers and exclusive giveaways for emergency services workers, NHS, social care, armed forces members, then be sure to like and follow the Blue Light Card on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, with weekly announcements and competitions with brands such as Prezzo, Starbucks, P&O Cruises. That's right, P&O Cruises. Make sure you are in with a chance of winning today. Head over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and search for Blue Light Card. Give them a follow, give them a like. You should be there anyway. Every day you fail to do this, you are missing out on some of the great savings from Blue Light Card, specifically put together as that massive thank you to all of our emergency services operators. Well, there you have it. That's the friends, the homies, the famalam of the Firefighters Podcast for today's episode. Super thankful to our partners. Very grateful for their support. Now, are you ready for this? Because honestly, I really enjoyed talking to Paul. I was even a little bit nervous before I went on with him, because this guy has done some absolutely incredible work. It is known, honestly, worldwide. When you finish the day's podcast, go in the notes below. Go over and check out Paul's Instagram, Paul's Facebook. Check out Drawn by Fire. Look at some of the incredible work this man has created. He's a true example of following your passion. I felt very inspired by him. I know he's going to have the same effect on you. So without further ado, buckle up for safety, kids, and I will see you on the other side. How are you, my good man?
Good, how are you?
I am absolutely fantastic. Honestly, thank you so much. I've been seeing your work for longer than I think I knew I had been, if that makes sense. You were, and I'm not just going to blow smoke up your ass for a minute before we start or anything like that, but I think you were that infamous. I didn't even realize you were still practicing your artwork. I didn't know at first. I thought these were just legendary images and things that had been passed around for, and I'm not trying to make you feel old or anything like that, but passed around for so long that I thought, it was just incredible. So thank you.
I'm old, but I'm not that old.
No, God, no. You're only as old as you feel, brother.
Let's get rolling.
Paul Coombs, welcome to the Firefighters Podcast. How are you doing, brother?
I am doing just fine. Thank you for the invite to join you today.
My man, thank you so much. I know we said before it came on, it really is a tremendous pleasure. I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass, but it's a real privilege to get to speak to people far and wide. And what I love so much about our conversation, I'm hoping from today, is that you, through the medium of everything that you do, but especially the visual aspects, you've found a way to really epitomize so many aspects that we either find inspiring, we're in love with, or that just really, really demonstrate some of the wonderful aspects of the fire department. So for anybody unfamiliar with yourself, illustrator, cartoonist, retired fire officer, you're an instructor, you're an author of 3 books now, is that correct?
4 will come out in 2 weeks.
Crikey,
we'll talk about that in a minute.
My apologies. You're also a leadership advisor and a keynote speaker. So feeling quite inferior. Let's just start it off there. But when did this whole journey begin? I mean, when did you first join the fire department, and why did you want to do it?
Well, I joined the fire department in 1995. And it's funny that much of my life has always been just kind of the spur of the moment. Jump both feet into the fire, so to speak. So I never really gave the fire service much thought at all. And a retired firefighter of a friend of mine was talking to me one day about all the benefits of being a firefighter and the excitement and everything like that. And 2 hours later, he had talked me into becoming one.
You know what? It's astonishing how many of the best guests we've ever had have said exactly that. You assume that if you cut Paul Coombs in half, it said firefighter down the middle since the day he was born. People think it came out with that, but so many people who are found so inspiring, and it just reminds me of so much why I love this whole aspect of the podcast, because it's not the thing, it's not the fire service, it's not the police, it's actually the people, and it just attracts incredible people like yourself. So it was never there from the beginning. No,
absolutely not. It did not come from a firefighter family. To be quite honest, I would drive by our fire departments, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's kind of cool."
Yeah.
It never entered my mind that one day I would be doing that.
Yeah. So how old were you in 95? If you don't mind, I'm a very impolite question, but you say you came in 95. How old would you be then?
29.
29.
So I started late.
Wow.
Yeah, started later.
So what came before that? Because obviously so many people know you for your artistic abilities. Was that something that came before that and then became this beautiful amalgamation of this like cocktail of art and heroicism, or which came first? Were you always into art as a child, or?
Yeah, so I've been drawing since I could hold a pencil, and I've always been an artist. I never knew I was never going to be an artist. From the time I was in high school, I was a freelance illustrator. So it was always art. That has always been there.
When did you first see it as something, because like you say, you said 2 things there, because you say it was always art, but when you kind of formalize it and become an artist, do you know what I mean? And you start getting commissioned to do things. When did that happen? Because as a child, when a child becomes a singer, they're just a singer. They sing in the shower, they sing, and then it was just natural. You must have been the doodler. You were drawing on everything, and it was just seemed so seamless. It just flowed out of you. When did it start becoming evident to you that you had a really, really unique skill set, and your passion for doing art was different to other children your age?
Well, again, like I said, if I had free time, I was drawing.
Yeah.
So to me, it was drawing and being an artist is like breathing. But it was probably, in high school when I realized that I had a skill that people would want, because I could forge signatures really, really well. And so what would happen is they would bring me blank doctor slips if they wanted to miss school, and I would forge the doctor's signatures.
Absolutely.
So and I was getting paid to do this. So I'm like, hey, there's money in
entrepreneurial itch happened earlier.
Yeah. So it was slightly illegal, but I pretty much knew from at least in the high school there was money into this, and people wanted to pay me to do this. Mm. And it meant that I didn't have to work a real job. Yeah. So it sounded pretty cool, because I come from my family are all laborers. They're farmers, they're coal miners, they're factory workers. And knowing that I was probably going to live that kind of life, art seemed like a really, really good option, if I pursued it. And I've been fortunate enough to do that for my career.
You know what? Now that you say that, though, about your upbringing and about the kind of people that were in your life, that really shines through when I think of some of the artwork that I've seen from you, because it comes very much, though, from a nurture aspect. You will have seen these dynamics through the way your family would speak about their work, through the way they would speak about, being in a labor-intensive job, having all the stereotypes of poor leadership and bad morale and disregarding health and safety and people, overly policy-driven and stuff like that. You must have heard that around the dinner table, and were you aware that that was becoming subconsciously ingrained in you?
Probably not aware of it, but I mean, now that I look back at it, of course, I mean, it was always there. It was always one of the things that I've always hated is a bully. Yeah. And so growing up in an atmosphere where, you were sitting around the kitchen table with laborers and, working class people, of course, it was always us against the man, and the leadership and the management and that sort of thing. But it kind of instilled this sense of fairness and hard work. I mean, nothing in my family was ever, we want handouts. Mm-hmm. It was, we're working hard, we deserve this. That sense of you work for what you want was instilled in me early, and also to fight for the little man, to fight against the bullies. I was probably, I'm a bigger guy. I was 6 foot before I was, even a freshman in high school. So I was, I didn't get bullied a lot, but the 4 or 5 fights that I even had when I was younger, was always me standing up for someone else. I'd see someone else getting bullied and I'd step in between them and the bully. That has always been something. And I mean, even in my artwork today, whether it's with freelance, because I do a lot of freelance work for occupational safety with a lot of corporations worldwide. So I'm doing artwork to help someone go home safely to their family with all 5 fingers and 5 toes. And I mean, and that's the approach I take even with that work. Yeah. But even with the fire service, I try to approach each of the illustrations and the cartoons that I do as an instructor, as a mentor. I want you to start these conversations.
That's what I mean, starting those conversations, because when I think back to, you say there's 4 or 5 fights that you're in there, standing up for the person getting bullied or standing up for something you see as wrong. I suppose I see the artwork in a similar fashion like you described there. It's something that will, a picture says 1,000 words. It stands there as an image, as a demonstration to other people of, this is wrong, or this is right. Or, let's look at this, and are we happy with what we're seeing? Do you know what I mean? Is this, and that is the incredible accuracy, an uncomfortable accuracy, I would say. And sometimes some of the images that you do, I say uncomfortable in a complimentary fashion, of course, where people look at it and they go, no, I'm annoyed and perhaps embarrassed that I recognize the truth in the artwork that I'm seeing. And how do I feel? Am I contributing to this? Or am I the sort of person that's going to see this and then challenge it?
Exactly. And it pisses people off sometimes because it is a reflection in the mirror. And I will tell you this, and I even pissed myself off with my own art at times. No, but seriously, because it is a reflection back at me too. I mean, a lot of times these come out of me as a reminder for me to do these things. Yeah. But editorial cartoons in their very essence, whether they be fire service or even political, are meant to be a catalyst of conversation. We're not changing the world, we're not changing policy, but what we're trying to do is get people who make those decisions to talk.
I was going to say, you say you're not changing the world, but I would argue indirectly you are, because, the world of social media that we are in now, these images change a person in the moment and change the way they behave and change their mindset and the way they go out into the world for the rest of the day. So to see that image, and I love what you said about almost this aspect of personal accountability, as it flows through you onto the paper, you're almost holding yourself accountable to it and saying, you know what, I recognize an aspect of myself in that piece of art. And the hope is, and this is the very, very manifestation of why I'm having this conversation with you today, is because I see so many aspects of a previous life and also some aspects of behaviors and habits that I still have now when I see the artwork and I think, you know what, there's a little bit of me in that. And sometimes I say that out of pride, and sometimes I go, you know what, I've got to be so aware of that. Not even just the fire service, the way I parent my children, the way I interact with people. I'm quite a big guy, so I come from a time when I didn't necessarily need to demonstrate my values and my morals, because I would hide behind a shield of strength and muscle, and I'm the big strong guy, and the rules don't apply to me, and that was weakness, and that was fear to me, and I see that in some of the work now when you see people hiding behind the badge or hiding behind the role, or hiding behind the rank. And where you see an inauthenticity and you go, you know what, that doesn't sit well with me, but that's because it's so true.
Yeah, and it's because I've either seen it or I've experienced it.
Yeah, absolutely. So take me back. We were 29, you said, you're a sort of a late starter. Mm-hmm. Now, When you started to make your passion sort of your profession, so I imagine leaving school 16, 17, 18, 19, did you do 10 years just as an art, not just, but as an artist and an illustrator before the fire service, or did something come in its place?
Yeah, so no, that's what I did. I was doing freelance artwork, kind of learning the landscape there a little bit. The thing, and it's funny because I was actually trained as a classical artist. I was trained as a painter. It was odd that it was about the same time I joined the fire service that I was commissioned by an art firm to do an editorial style cartoon, jabbing another art firm as a joke. and I'd never done any type of cartooning up to that point.
What was your impression of cartooning? Did you hold it in high regard, or did you think, because you were classically trained, do you think I'm better than this, or did you want to do it?
You know what? It was never, again, it was like the fire service. I'd really never given it much thought to do professionally until I did it, and then I loved it. So I always loved it. I grew up with the American classics of Calvin and Hobbes and The Far Side and those type of cartoons, and I would read them daily, and I loved those type of cartoons, but I never gave political cartoons much of a glance.
Did you see it as art in the same respect? Because some people, would go to the Louvre and think, oh, only stuff that's in these incredible establishments is art, but I see the artwork that you do now as so much more relatable than what perhaps a traditional, a purist artist would think of as art. I can't personally relate to some of that as much as I can to the work you do. Right.
And in a lot of ways, I think it is even more unique of a medium. Because that's one of the things in researching the project and trying to learn an editorial style. You take 10 fine artists and you ask them to do a portrait of you. You're going to get 10 fairly, similar portraits because they're all doing this very realistic thing. You ask the cartoonist to do this, it's going to be all over the board. It is such a unique medium because it is such a funnel for personal creativity, and to be able to put your everyone sees life through their own lens, and that allows you to funnel that so much into that type of medium. And that's what I fell in love with. And I realized that, it was hard to go back to fine art once I got a taste of doing those.
Once you've opened Pandora's box and you see the freedom that's allowed in that. I don't know if it's going to be the title of this episode, but it's almost like the artist that realizes they can draw outside the lines. Do you know what I mean? Realizing that art doesn't have to conform to these ideologies that you once thought.
Yeah. And so much so that, I look at fine art today and I find it boring.
Oh, bless him.
I do. I find it boring because to me, it follows the rules too much.
Yeah.
And so, when I do these types of whimsical type illustrations, and I think one of the things that makes my work unique, if it is unique, is the fact that I bring that fine art training to the cartooning world.
Yeah.
It's the painting aspect, it's the lighting, it's the shadowing, it's the expressions, the facial, the gestures, and those things that I bring into that world that I wouldn't have had if I wouldn't have had that training as a fine artist. So it both had to happen for this.
I know, and when I hear you speak about that almost cocktail of the artist you are now, and I know we kind of got, I love about the podcast, we go on so many little rabbit holes, I think, and I'd love to just ask you, obviously I've no idea, but the evolution of artwork in how much we now respect things such as graffiti and even digital artwork, and the evolution of the digital world in art is so surreal. It really does say a lot about, though, that the value of something is exactly that. It's what the individual places upon it. And that must be such a strange duality, such a strange, difficult time for some artists who are in a fixed mindset to live in the time that we're in now, because it's just exploded, and it's wonderful to see these different diverse artists being acknowledged. But do you hear that in the sector? Is there a frustration around how much is changing? Oh, absolutely.
And as an artist, it scares the hell out of you because you don't want to get passed by. I'm 55 years old and I feel like I'm in the prime of my artistic life.
Absolutely.
And and artists never retire. So if I can still draw at 90, I'm going to be drawing and trying to be a freelance illustrator. And I think that the artists that learn to adapt and the ones that learn to survive and all this are the ones that keep an open mind to the new trend. And I experience it now because I know a lot of my work looks old-fashioned at times to the newer style of cartooning.
Okay.
Because it's a whole generation that's grown up with Cartoon Network.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
You know, and I grew up on Looney Tunes and Super Friends, and I mean, I know I'm really dating myself here, but it was a different style of cartooning. It was a different pace to the cartoons.
But I also think that we have a real soft spots and nostalgia now as well. So even though it perhaps that style is acknowledged as an older style, we also love so many things that are from that era. But when you said about just there, to paraphrase you, moving out, or sorry, not being quote unquote in fashion, or not being passed over, isn't there an irony in that when you look back? And I will completely ruin this, and I'm sure I'll misquote and get the timelines wrong, but in my very limited interpretation, some of the most celebrated artists were not celebrated in their time, whereas you're experiencing a tremendous amount of success and acknowledgement, and you're so young, you know, you're 55, whereas, you know, your Van Goghs of the world didn't sell, I don't think they sold anything. They didn't, you know, they weren't famous during their period of time, were they? So that's got to be a surreal thing as well. The fact that you are being acknowledged for the great work, even now, as you're creating it.
Right. You know, and honestly, I've never been one to get caught up into that. You know, I create what I create, you know, and I put it out there for the world, and you either like it or you don't. You know, again, the whole point of this is I see something that I think needs to be talked about, and I draw something on the topic. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's not meant to be funny. It's meant to be a punch in the gut. You know, like you mentioned earlier, sometimes they're hard to look at. Sometimes it's a hard topic to even dive into. But, you know, I mean, there's a story that I was told 6 years ago where a gal she'd experienced some traumatic calls, and she had a near line of duty death by her partner. And she was spiraling downward, and the department really was trying to reach her. They were trying to talk to her, and no one could. She just wouldn't open up. Until one day she walked into her fire chief's office, closed the door, and handed him her cell phone that had one of my cartoons on it. And it was, you know, I can't talk about suicide. I need help. Yeah. And so the conversation, she couldn't just openly start. She used one of my cartoons to do it.
That is so powerful.
And that is the spark that keeps me going.
Yeah.
Is to know that I'm touching one person's life in such a way. I mean, I did nothing in the way of helping her. I mean, and honestly, I did get some updates after that, and she had been getting some help, and it seemed like, you know, life was on an upward trajectory for her, and it was fantastic. And I had nothing to do with that part of it. The only thing that I had that was even remotely on that path was I gave her an avenue to start the conversation, and it was up to people you know, by far smarter than I am to fix the problem. Those are the little things, and that is the power of art. Is that within that 5 or 10 seconds that you read that, it creates such an emotional response if you've done your job correctly. It will get those conversations started, whether you throw the magazine across the floor, or, you know, you laugh at it, or, you know, it starts, you know, again, you know, it pisses people off sometimes, and that's okay.
Yeah. And I suppose it's a case of feeling comfortable with that when people, and I'm sure you've had the feedback in the past where they're like, don't you think that's inappropriate, Paul? Don't you think that's a little bit close to the bone? And it's a bit like you're walking around the emergency services with a flashlight and opening up lockers and shining it in there, and everyone goes, oh yeah, Jesus, it's a bit, sorry. And you're like, let's talk about it. And they're like, can't we just close the locker and forget it's there? And you just keep opening these up. You keep shining lights in corners, and people go, we need to do something about that, don't we?
I hope so.
So 29, you came into the sector. Where did you serve?
A little Rockwellian town in Bryan, Ohio. The town itself is about 10,000 in population. My department, we did urban and rural, and we covered about 90 square miles and about 13,000 souls. So, you know, it was this beautiful place. We call it Cornopolis because it really is paradise surrounded by 200 miles of cornfields. You know, but it's this beautiful place to raise a family, and, you know, and I was born in this town, and even though I've moved and come back numerous times in my life, there's something about this area that just keeps drawing me back.
When you joined at 29, when was the first time you released your first sort of? Did people know in the sector that you were already an artist? Did you talk about it when you first joined the service, or?
Yeah, I mean, they knew. I mean, I was always being asked to draw logos, and, you know, I mean, all those sort of things.
Yeah.
But I was still doing fine art at the time, and so my first few firefighter pieces were all fine art.
Really?
You know, they were, you know, like puppies in a fire helmet, or, you know, I mean, it was very realistic type work, and it was boring as hell. God, I hated it. And
were these all commission pieces that people just wanted you to?
No, it was just, I hated it. It was such a dredge. But, you know, the funny thing is that by way of doing that political cartoon assignment, I fell in love with political cartooning. And the funny thing is, within about a year of that, I was actually the staff editorial political cartoonist of the Tampa Bay Times in Tampa Bay, Florida.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was, again, like everything in my life, I put both feet in and it skyrockets.
You were still working as an operational member of the crew. How did you ever think about just leaving it? And because you were clearly being so successful in two separate fields there.
Yeah, well, actually, I did leave the fire service, and I picked up my family from Ohio, and we all moved to Florida.
Yeah.
Which is actually, if you've never been there, a different fucking planet. It really is. I was warned.
About Florida.
Even the bugs are mutant bugs. And I was like, how bad could it be? Florida is another planet.
Yeah.
It really is.
It is fucking crazy. I've been once, and everything is bigger, louder, stranger, more colourful.
It is.
The ends of the spectrum, they really get explored out there. It's exciting.
It is. And I mean, it's a great place to go back and visit, but I'm not a place I would ever want to go back to live. But anyway, I was
very inspiring for an artist, though, surely. Yeah, for an artist. Wow.
You know what? Yeah, it was great for people watching.
Fed your mind.
There's definitely some great characters there. But yeah, so and it wasn't until I'd been with the Tampa Tribune for probably 6 or 7 months that the government here decided to put out the Fire Act, which was a series of grants that fire departments could actually apply for. Wow. And they were making all these grand promises, and they were putting this thing out with a thimble. So I did a political cartoon. Since it was political in nature, I did one for the Tampa Tribune. And my editor, knowing that I had a firefighter background, she's like, "Great, let's run it." And that evening, I was just on a whim, I sent this to firehouse.com. I said, "Is this something you'd be interested in running?" And again, like everything else, within a few hours, I was getting a phone call saying, "We want these. We got a contract."
Wow.
And that's how my fire service cartoon career started. Everything's a series of launch points, and yeah, and I was ecstatic about it because I'd been out of the fire service for almost a year at that point.
Yeah,
and it was hating it, and so this was a way that I felt like I was at least back in the fire service a little bit. So we moved back to Ohio, and I got back on my own department, and and finished out a 25-year career.
What is it about the fire service versus the police? And because we fully appreciate and acknowledge all of our frontline workers and the different work that they do, but what was it about the ethos or the team aspect of the fire service? What was it that was different to you? Why not choose to double down in a different area?
Right. I mean, that's strange. I don't think I've ever been asked that. Honestly, I think the first thing that attracted me were the fire trucks. As a kid, you always see the fire trucks. It's like, oh my gosh, And even to this day, that is still one of my favorite things to do is to be the chauffeur.
Yeah.
I love to drive the big red truck, and that's just where the kid comes out of you.
It does.
But I think it was a lot of it was, that, I mean, the fire department is one of the few things in the world where you show up and everyone is happy.
Bang. Absolutely. Hit the nail on the head. Some people love or hate the police. Some people feel differently about it. But the fire brigade, everybody's pleased to see you. It's just, I feel guilty sometimes about our police and about our, our EMS because, they get some horrible abuse. But the fire service, it's like, you're only there to help. Yeah. It's so unique.
Yes, absolutely. So I love that aspect of it. But it was just the camaraderie and the feeling I had with the guys, and the fact that a firefighter from Bryan, Ohio, can walk into a fire department in New York City, and there's like, hey, come on in. There's coffee in the kitchen.
I know.
I was in London a couple of I guess about a year and a half ago now, and we were at the St. Pancras area. And I walked into one of the local departments, and and they were just like, "Hey, come on in! You're a firefighter. You're all part of the family." And I loved that inclusiveness. Of being part of that network of family.
It's so surreal in that respect. So I wanted to ask you about. So you've mentioned obviously you started getting commissioned for pieces. You've been acknowledged and recognized for this talent, but it sounds like it was becoming quite in demand now. When we start talking about contracts and we start talking about expectation, this suggests you need to deliver on demand. And that kind of, for me, flies in the face of something that you naturally do as a passion. Because that can be a gift and a curse. Yeah, I mean, and it's a bit like writer's block. It's all well and good when it's flowing, but when there is a demand placed upon you to do something naturally that you've now got to force out of you. Did that change for you when it became more formal? You're a paid artist. Great, that's exactly what you've always wanted, but a lot of pressure then, surely.
There's a lot of pressure and creativity, like a lot of things. There's an ebb and flow to it. There's a tied in and a tied out. even throughout the day. And I've been doing this long enough now that I understand when I know the tides are strongest for me during the day and when they're not. And I do my day's activities based on how I know that creative flow is going to happen. Mm. But, there is some pressure to it, and I thrive on that. I like the pressure. I like okay, here's this assignment. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it, but there's a lot of money that they're that's riding on this, and they have a lot of high expectations, and I kind of like that pressure.
Mm. You said about flow.
It's kind of like being an athlete. How the best athletes seem to thrive in the highest pressure moments.
Yeah,
because they kind of get off on that pressure. And I think a lot of the better artists out there kind of do the same thing. And it's not a lifestyle for everyone. I mean, that can really beat some people down. If you're not used to that freelance type of life, where, you have a lot of high expectations, that, it pushes out a lot of talented artists.
Well, you said a lot about flow, and Czech Setnihar, I forget the gentleman's name, wrote a book about flow. And when you speak about an athlete, there's ways that you can trigger this. There's ways you can prime your body, you can prime your mind. There's little things, little behaviors, little music, a habit, a drink, a thing. People can set the game up to win. I know it's perhaps a very specific artist question, but this may be very useful. I know it's certainly useful for me. I've got certain things I do in the morning that prime me up. Do you have a way of getting yourself into that flow? You say you've got a good self-awareness about when in the day you are most productive, and you can feel it come in and you can feel the ebb and the flow of it. How do you trigger it? Can you trigger it? Do you have a system? Do you have a habit in the morning that gets you into that?
Yeah, for me, and it's funny that a lot of artists I know are complete slobs, and they work in this chaos of mess. I am OCD. So the first thing that I come into and I do in the morning is I completely clean and organize my studio. And that is my time of going, okay, everything is in its place. Everything is here. I know what I need to work on. And that is my kind of moment that I actually start focusing in a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I know that's my trigger to say, okay, it's business time.
So you're removing the noise of life, because some people have this idea that creativity and conformity are complete opposites. Do you know what I mean? You can't be creative without letting yourself loose, without being a bit free and happy and unorganized. And they think creativity and flow, because by its very nature it seems natural, it shouldn't be conformist. But you find having that structure helps you declutter your life and really focus in. Is that right?
Right. Well, because for me, that is the decluttering of my mind. Is that, when everything is clean and everything is in place. And I do that between assignments as well, that after an assignment is done, I will actually wipe everything clean.
Really?
All the files are put away in the computer. Everything is off the desk. Everything is put away, because that is my way of saying, okay, clean slate. Yeah. And now it's when my creativity can run wild.
Yeah.
Because if not, I know that that's going to be a distraction.
You've got that bias from the last piece. That bias is in there.
Exactly.
And even if you don't think it is, it will be influencing the next thing that you do, no doubt. So
and being like most artists, I guess I'm temperamental as hell. So when something like that even interferes with that process, it pisses me off and makes me stumble right out of the gate.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So it's a very ritualistic thing that I do.
Oh God, yeah.
That that even I can't even go on vacation without getting up in the morning and I'll straighten up the hotel room. Because that's just. I'm still in that mindset. The best thing that has to be done for me to operate there and not today.
It's the easiest thing.
It's something as simple as I can't listen to music with lyrics if I'm creating.
Really?
Yeah. If I'm in the actual creation process, I cannot listen to music with lyrics, because my mind will already start. I'm singing along, or I'm thinking about the lyrics or something. So it has to be just music. Yeah. It's either movie soundtracks or classical or jazz.
You know what? I do something similar.
That takes care of the left side of my brain, and so the right side can actually create.
That's it. I do something similar, but what I do is I will listen to one track on repeat. So my mind's not trying to keep up or figure out or try and sing along or anything. It's just the same thing on repeat. And it almost, like you say, it just occupies that side of my mind. So I can focus on what I'm doing, and I literally just have noise-cancelling headphones. And I'm sure there's something in me here, and perhaps I see it in yourself as well. I was an addict in a previous life, so I know I have that intensity about me. So if I'm not aware of it, and if I don't give it something to play with, it can be awfully it can annoy me, it will distract me, it won't let me get on with things if I don't give it something to play with. So yeah.
And the flip side of that too is the creative side can go out of control as well. Because like I said, I mean, we'll go on vacation, and my wife and I will be going out and doing something. And that part of my brain will be turned on and receptive to everything. Yeah. And I'm looking at shadows. I'm looking at people. I'm looking at all these things. And I'm like a sponge, and I'm soaking all this creativity in. And I don't have a sketchbook. I don't have a way to release that part of that creativity. So, I mean, I carry a little sketchbook with me everywhere I go, just for that reason, because I have to get that out, or it drives me crazy. And I can't concentrate. I can't enjoy my day because, absolutely.
I was going to say, how do you think that is to be around? How do you think that is for your partner? Is that easy for her, or do you find?
Yeah, well, you know, after 29 years of marriage, I think she's learned to adapt. She doesn't always like it, but she's learned to adapt to it because she knows that's something that, I mean, it's not a physical switch that I'm turning off and on. It's just, you know, how I'm wired.
Yeah.
And she's, you know, she's a saint because she puts up with this sometimes. But, you know, I mean, there are times where, I mean, I can't sleep at night because my brain is trying to figure out an artistic, because you were talking about that pressure.
Yeah.
You know, of this, and sometimes that creative flow isn't there when it needs to be. So it creates this sense of fear. Of, oh my God, I'm the worst artist in the world. There's no way I'm ever going to figure this out. You know, I should just drop everything and raise goats. I mean, it's that sort of thing. And that's the stuff your brain tells you at 3 o'clock in the morning. Is you suck.
Yeah.
You suck. You know, you
the
suck.
Game's up. Everybody knows you can't do it.
Awful. Yeah. You're done. You're finished. You're washed up.
Is it? Do you ever have that?
A lot of times it's the fear of failure that drives you to create.
I was literally about to go there. Is it the aspect of wanting to create the next piece, or is it that, I don't know whether we use the word imposter syndrome, or the fear that the inspiration's not here today, but what if it never comes back? You know, what if it's the tortured genius, isn't it? When I see you, it's I think I'm probably lucky to not have any talent in that respect. I've got some talent, of course, but have such a pure talent like that you have to have, you know, you spoke about that notebook, you have to have a pressure release valve. It's the sort of thing you can't switch it off, and it can, we've all seen these ideas. Sometimes you see it when you see an artist, and the idea of one that's tucked away in a room with paints and brushes and everywhere, and there's not, if you just squinted at them, you could very quickly think that you're looking at a crazy person. And I think it depends on what field the person exists. If this person exists in music, then we say they're passionate. If it's artists, then we say that they're artistic. But if that person can't find a way to express themselves, they can end up down a route of addiction or a route of self-harm. It's a very intense energy, and it seems like, I don't know,
Absolutely.
Would you say, have you ever seen that in other artists? I know we're not going to name names and things like that, but
right.
You've been lucky. I don't want to say lucky, but you've found a niche and you're very, very good at it. But for every one artist that finds their groove, finds their rhythm, finds their flow, there must be a lot that live in a perpetual torture. I don't know. Do you see that in the industry at all?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. You know, and I mean, and yeah, you know what, you said lucky, and it really is. There is a little bit of formal luck to this.
I mean, I don't like the word luck.
You know, I mean, a lot of times you put I'm a big believer that you put yourself in position to be lucky.
Exactly.
But there is still some luck that happens. There is some magical force in the universe that says, hey, today this person will contact you out of the blue. You know, and it's as simple as, you know, one of the first freelance gigs I got was I did a cold call to a company that was they were a toy manufacturer, and the head artist there, the art director, had no interest in me whatsoever. but he kept my samples, and just by chance he laid them face up on a desk instead of face down. Another illustrator that was working on a project walked by and went, "Who's this guy?" As simple as he laid the artwork up or down was whether or not I ever got noticed for my very first real big freelance job.
That's it, isn't
so
it?
Again, I put myself in a position to be lucky.
Exactly.
But you got to be able to get yourself out there. And I think a lot of artists just turmoil in the fact of they either can't get out of their own heads, and, you know, it's like, oh, I've got to be an artiste.
Yes.
You know, and I can't lower myself to make a living doing this, or they try too hard, or they just don't want to put in the hard work. Like I said, you know, 90% of what I do is actually business work. It's the marketing, it's the advertising, it's the cold calls, it's going out and talking with people. It's, you know, meeting, you know, in these days, Zoom meetings with clients.
Yeah.
And it's taking notes. And then the other 10% of that is the actual physical drawing and giving them the product that they've asked for.
Yeah. Do you know what? And I know it's not something we necessarily discussed before, but, you know, when I'm hearing you there, my mind goes in a million directions. When you have these marketing calls, it must, because I've worked with a couple of companies in and around values and beliefs and stuff like that, and I don't know, perhaps some of this plays into when they're trying to manifest that into a visual, description, a visual representation, of what they are. How do you navigate those conversations? Because when I've had these conversations before, they're very difficult because sometimes, by the very nature of the fact they are commissioning an artist, they don't really know what they want sometimes. So how much of these guided conversations, and how do you draw out of people what they truly want? Because surely there are sometimes until they see it, they don't really know.
Exactly. And then again, that's one of the benefits of being freelance and working in the field as long as I've had an opportunity. This is not my first rodeo with a difficult client or someone who is like, oh, we have all these grand ideas, and I'm looking at this and I'm deciphering all this down into maybe one or two little topics, and go, okay, here's what you really need.
Yeah.
But and you know how it is when you talk to people. You have to actually speak in a way that makes it sound like it's their idea.
Of course. Oh my God, you're the visionary. You know exactly. Oh, you've said it. You hit the nail on the head. That's it. Oh my God. I'm just flowing through you.
Yeah. And so there's a little bit of that. Like I said, that's the business part of what I do. Is I have to be a little bit of a salesman in there too. But it's just a matter of listening. Because with everything that they're telling you in there is a little bit of a grain of what they're really, really looking for.
Of course.
And a lot of it's a little bit of research on my part. Before I have a call with the client, I've done the research on them. I've looked at what they do, what they create. What are they trying to sell? What are they trying to accomplish? So when I come to the meeting, I've actually got 2 or 3 pages of notes and say, okay, here's what I see and here's what I'm hearing. Is this what you want? And then by that point, then sometimes it's a more refined shotgun approach with what they're looking for instead of a larger scatter. But I can at least narrow it down and give them 2 or 3 concepts to say, okay, of these 3, which one works best? It's like going to the eye doctor.
Yeah.
Is it 1 or 2 or 3? And which one is clear? Well, in a lot of ways, it's the same when you're doing the creation process and working with clients.
Yeah.
Is that you just keep refining it down till you get exactly what it is they're looking for.
Do you find yourself in somewhat of a unique position now, though, because you're so experienced, because you've had a certain amount of success in the industry, that when you first started out, did you ever find yourself having to try and create something that you didn't like? Or have you ever done a piece that you felt, God, the person loves it, but do you ever look back on a piece and go, God, I didn't like that?
Yeah, I have.
That's got to be painful.
Full of artwork that I hate. But but it's just like anything else. You have to pay the bills. You have to keep the lights in the studio on.
Yeah.
And so when you're a younger illustrator, and this is a stumbling block that a lot of younger artists and illustrators find.
Yeah.
Is that until you establish yourself, until you get out there and you get yourself in a position where you can turn down the jobs you don't want.
Yeah.
You have to take the jobs you don't want.
Yeah.
Because again, you have to pay the bills. You have to keep the lights on in the studio. So you just suck it up and you do that job. It's like any job. There are jobs in the fire service no one really likes to do. They're not sexy jobs, but you do it because you're part of that team and you're all part of the big picture. It's not any different than any other, field of work.
Do you think there's a bit of an illusion there, though, with artists in the newer sense, because they see successful people having the privilege to turn down certain works? Do you think there's an aspect where they feel a bit entitled and they're like, I'm an artist, you don't understand me, you don't get it, and they forget that even people such as yourself, way back when you were like, yeah, you have to do stuff that's a bit shit, you have to do stuff you don't want to do all the time, you might not want to get up and do the next logo because it's the same as the other 50 that you did, but it's not all about you. You have to maybe get over yourself. And like you say, you see it in the fire service. Everybody wants to be in charge. Everybody wants to be standing on the end of the branch, squirting at the fire. But you know what? Somebody's got to go and run out 50 lengths of hose down that bloody alleyway.
Exactly.
And someone's got to do the shit jobs. Do you find that now with new artists, that sense of entitlement? Sometimes, not everybody, of course, but sometimes.
But it's not a generational thing. There are still artists that have been doing it for 20, 30 years that are exactly the same way.
Really?
They are. And they've struggled their entire career because of that mentality. And some it's worked for it. But you see it most, I think, with the artists that are first coming up, because again, everyone wants that piece of the pie, everyone wants that success.
Yeah.
And and if you're impatient and you see other people with that success, you strive for that. And the good ones use that as motivation.
Yeah.
There's that target that I want to reach. Now I'm going to work hard to get to that target.
Yeah.
And then the other ones that just wallow in the self-denial or self-pity of, I want to be there, oh, poor pity me, I'm not there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go lower myself to take this job. Oh, by the way, I'm going to go work at the local warehouse because I can't pay the bill. But we were just talking about the struggles that a lot of artists have.
Yeah.
And that's it. You just have to get over yourself sometimes.
That's a
and
big
do what you have to do.
Yeah, getting over yourself. Do you think there's an aspect of sort of Me Too impersonations as well? Like people before you were around, nobody did the aspect of, you know, illustrations, cartoonists, and stuff like that in the emergency services sector. People will try and copy it now, and I'm sure they already have, and I'm sure, you know, people were always doing their impression of somebody else's work. You decided at some point in time, and I know you still do a lot of other work that you're commissioned for, but you've doubled down in this niche. Were you ever worried about getting pigeonholed, being able, people thinking that you're only one dimensional and that this is the only thing that you do because it's become so popular? Do you think people worry about doing that, and have you ever worried about it, I suppose?
Well, you know, I've never really gave it much thought. Thanks. Now that I'm thinking about it, scares the hell out of me. Appreciate it.
People
I really didn't have anything to worry about today, so I appreciate it.
People say to me, they're like, you know, why do you just want to speak to people in the emergency services? Do you not think that, you know, well, right. if somebody really, really, really famous, if Barack Obama said, Pete Wakefield, I'm going to come on your podcast, well, I'd have to say no, because I'm like, you've got nothing to do with the emergency services. But deciding to commit to something like that because you have an authenticity to it. You know, you've been in the sector, but it is a niche, you know?
Yeah, you know, and I've never really thought much about, you know, that I was actually being handcuffed by it. And even if you look back, I mean, the 16 years that I've been creating these, you know, there's a certain underlying style, but the overall style has kind of changed and evolved over these last, you know, 15, 16 years, because I'm not like, okay, it's got to be drawn the exact same way as I drew it in 2005. You know, as an artist, I'm always experimenting, because I mean, I've went from drawing traditional and painting traditionally to, I still do a little bit of traditional drawing, but most of what I do now is on this, you know, I know it's not video, but I've got this huge, you know, Wacom Cintiq 34-inch digital screen that I actually draw and paint on now.
That is an incredible piece of kit.
So, I mean, even the evolution of technology has made creating what I do different. And, you know, that you can see a little bit of it. And one of the things that I even struggle with as an artist is I'm very detail-oriented. So sometimes being able to blow up and get tight into something makes my work a little too sterile, I think. And I have to back out a little bit and say, okay, loosen it up, because it's getting too tight. You know, so you kind of, you can get sucked into the technology a little bit as well. So, you know, my work has evolved and changed, you know, with what I do. It's, you know, the fire service has changed in 16 years that I've been doing this with gear and, you know, technology and stuff. So, I mean, you know, so you see that kind of flow into it as well. But I've never really thought about being pigeonholed into any type of style. My style is my style. It's what I enjoy doing. You know, that we talked about, you know, when we started the conversation about having 3 books. We just completed our 4th, which is a children's book, which is my first, with Chief Frank Pascuzzo. And that actually, we're taking pre-orders now, but it actually hits the markets in about 2 weeks. And that is a process, again, that I had to kind of step back and relearn how to draw in a different style, because fire service cartoons that I do, I tell an entire story in one frame.
Yes. Do you have to slow yourself down and allow that progress?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've never told a story over, you know, 36 spreads.
Yeah.
And let it progress and not try to tell the entire story in one frame. So I had to take a step back and relearn how to be a storyteller in that sense.
That must
and even though that there's still some recognizable style in this book, it's a lot more painterly. I was able to pull a lot of my, you know, classic training into this. So there's a lot of lighting and there's a lot of subtlety and different things that the book has that I typically don't put into my editorial cartoons.
Is there a strange bit of pressure in trying to create an entire story within one image? Like you say, you've been so accustomed to doing it that there was a strange reversal to try and discipline yourself to separate it all up. What was the motivation to release even the first book? You know, because you've done 4 now. You know, I mean, crikey, you've clearly found a passion within that as well. But it's an entirely different style of artistry. What motivated you to do the first one?
Again, it's that love of doing the political cartoons, because again, they would tell an entire story in that one frame.
Yeah. And,
you know, that was the same that was always drawing me to the Gary Larson's Far Side, because it was an entire gag in one frame.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I didn't have multiple frames to set it up, joke, you know, or it wasn't, you know, everything had to be told in that one frame. And again, I kind of like that pressure of being able to say, okay, how does it flow? If you're reading this left to right, top to bottom, you know, what character is going to come out first? Yeah. I want your eyes to move around that one panel in a certain way. And that's how I set up the joke, because I don't have multiple panels, so I have to use your eyes as the viewer to set up the joke.
That's got to be so surreal.
Or to make the point. Yeah, so that kind of came naturally, honestly. Yeah. And it was stepping back to tell a sequential story that I started with. And I mean, it was almost a year of experimenting and doing different things and not listening to the voices in my own head saying, you suck, you're never going to do this, and being able just to start putting pen to paper. It was almost a year.
Yeah.
I think Frank and I have created some, because he created an amazing story. The book's called Sprinkles the Fire Dog.
Yes.
And it's all about this puppy who wants to be a fire dog. He wants to, he's a puppy on the streets of a big city. And the corner mutts are always telling him that he can't do it. They're always putting him down. And it's all a story about working hard for what you want to accomplish your dreams. Mm. And so Frank approached this with me with this great story. Mm. And I immediately fell in love with Sprinkles because of the corner mutt bullies.
Yeah. That's it, isn't it?
It was the bullies on the corner that drew me to it. Again, it was that, okay, I'm going to go fight these bullies.
They're literally underdog. It is the underdog story, literally.
And that's what really drew me to the story.
Yeah.
And I think we've created something special within the fire service, because I've never seen a children's book out there. And I call it a children's book, but you know what? It's just something that's going to relate to all ages.
All of the children's books often do, don't they? They stand the test of time because the story arc, the message within it, it's eternal. Do you know what I mean? It's often like you say, it's the bully, it's the underdog, it's the kid that gets left out, it's the small, because we're all inside, all of us. Well, there's all still a kid inside of us, and you see this in the fire service more than anything. I wanted to be a firefighter when I was a very young child, but I not fell out of love with it. I thought it wasn't a possibility for me between the ages of maybe 10 to 18. I thought, oh no, that's a kid's dream. I'm never quite going to do it. And then you kind of fall back in love with it. And, for those that don't get that, it's very difficult. We talk about maybe being fulfilled in our job, following our passion, and people will look at you and they might go, wow, Paul, it's amazing. You're able to do something you're so passionate about every single day. I've never found that. And when people revisit a childhood book or when they read a storybook, it kind of ignites that fire within them when they were like, you know what, I see a lot of me in that story. And who honestly has never had that underdog story? I think we all have in some fashion.
Well, and absolutely, and the funny thing about creating this is that I didn't jump from, the first spread to the 20th spread, go back and do the 8th spread. I actually illustrated this out sequentially. So I illustrated the book as the story goes. Yeah. I mean, again, I think that goes back to my OCD thing and, and that natural flow. And so as the story went along and as I'm creating each of these spreads for the story, by the time Sprinkles reaches his, we call it the Rocky moment, that, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be the fire dog. I'm like, yeah, I'm rooting for him. I'm like, yeah, that's my dog right there. You get it, buddy. Hell yeah.
I wouldn't be able to stop myself from doing that final frame. I'd end up just rushing. I'd do the final frame and then work my way back because I'm just so impatient. That must have been some discipline.
Well, and that's funny. That the very first sample piece that I did to kind of get the style was what ended up being the actual end illustration.
I thought it.
So I was working with the end in mind, but I'd worked back from the beginning up to that point.
Yeah. And
it was there's just this one spread where he decides he's going to be that fire dog. That I just swelled with pride, and it wasn't. I totally removed myself as the artist from that situation, and I'm just proud of this little dog. And I'm walking around going, "You know what Sprinkles did today?" My wife's like, "You drew it."
Yeah, I know, baby.
Like, no, it's bigger than that.
Come and look again.
He became a fire dog today. You don't get it.
Is there
it's funny the emotion of creating something like that caused. And I'm totally hooked. I can't wait to start my next children's book.
I was going to say, it must
totally hooked.
Because, children's books, they give so much freedom. I think it's the innocence of a child that we've not been tainted or, ruined by the dogma of society. And, when we start to grow up, sometimes it can diminish and dampen that spirit within people. Creating things like that. And I think there's so much of it, perhaps in the cartoon aspect of the art that you do, that allows because when we've spoken about leadership, we've spoken about people being bullied, not being looked after, not being acknowledged, not being loved and supported. A lot of that comes through in your work, and I suppose a lot of it speaks to that inner child within the person, and perhaps that's a running theme behind so much of it. Is that where you see a lot of your work going, exploring this aspect of children's books even more, because you clearly have such a passion for it?
Right, and it does. I mean, I've always looked at myself as, and I guess even in a superhero sense as a kid, as being the guardian.
Yeah.
I mean, as a kid, I always wanted to be Captain America. I took a trash can lid, the old style aluminum trash can lid, and I painted the star and the stripes on it, and I would walk around the yard. I was Captain America, and that sense of the Boy Scout always doing something right and always fighting the little guy and, fighting the bully. I see that sense. And then, like I said, even with this book, and even a couple that I'm thinking of illustrating and writing on my own,
really
still have that underlying of what a true hero really is.
Yeah.
And it's not the Captain America. It's not the Superman. It's not, it's not anything we see in the movies. It is the firefighter. It is the police officer. It is the EMT, the soldier. It's the teachers. It's the doctors and nurses. Those are the true heroes in our society, and I remember that I was probably a young teen. I can't remember exact age I was, but I used to mow the grass for an elderly couple that lived near us in our neighborhood. And one day, I think it was like maybe the second time I kind of blown it off, and I was late. And he just like, come on up and have some lemonade with me. He was an older gentleman, and I was like, okay, I'm in trouble.
Life
and he
lessons.
just wanted to have a talk. And he was starting to tell me stories about when he fought in World War I, and then when he fought again in World War II. And he was telling me these stories of what it was really like to be a hero and the people he looked up to and what it meant to be a person of your word and the honesty, integrity, humility. And without really knowing it, I was getting a life lesson from this man of, you made a promise to be here to mow my grass, mow my damn grass.
Yeah.
Because that's what people of responsibility do.
Yeah.
And I kept that story with me. And that was talk about something that changes your life trajectory at an early age, is that it's not about the superficial heroes that you think you have in your life. It is people of integrity and honor.
That's it.
That you need to be respecting, and I think, again, one of those moments of when I was listening to my friend talk about the fire service when I'd never really given it much consideration was, wow, this is really intriguing.
Yeah.
This is kind of something that sounds fascinating. Talked me into going into my local department, and the minute I walked into the door, I got a smell of the diesel, the gear. I think they'd had a structure fire the day prior. Yeah. So that firehouse just had that smell. It was before all the clean cabs and everything was being washed, so the place reeked of fire. And I remember thinking, oh my God, this is it.
This is it.
This is one of those places it's like walking into your mom's kitchen.
Yeah.
It just felt like home.
This is where it happens, yeah.
And that's just how it started. But,
you say
I've always been that person that wants to fight for the bully. And I honestly see that's where my future work,
and
even in children's books, is going to go.
I think there's a larger thing being said there as well, because we believe these heroes live in far off lands. They live on a battlefield. They live in a structure fire on the 25th floor. They live, in a far off country doing battle with a formidable foe. But heroic acts are everywhere. Like you were just saying there, the hero, we think the hero is wearing a cape flying through the clouds, but the heroic act, and that comes back, and I don't want to keep beating the drum with it, but it comes back to those storybooks, the heroic act, the single mom working 5 jobs and having a mountain of stress and then sitting down with their child to hear how they got picked last for football today. That heroic act of listening and appreciating and acknowledging them, those acts, we can all do heroic acts, irrespective of our position, irrespective of whether or not we're in the fire service or we're not in the fire service. Heroic acts don't always have to be done by heroes, if that makes sense. And you can be a hero, your heroes are in the storybooks.
Well, absolutely. I mean, a hero act is my father working as a coal miner, doing a job day in and day out that he hated. Yeah. Because that was only the skill that he had, but that's what he had to do. That's what he had to do to pay the bills, put food on the table, to make sure that his son had a college education. Yeah. That's hero work.
Damn right.
That's putting your own selfish needs aside to do the greater good, and whether that's the greater good for society or the greater good for your family. Those are the heroes. It's the high school teacher that day in and day out, year after year, teaches kids that may or may not respect what they're doing, but do it anyway because they know that someday they're going to reach that one student that goes on to greatness.
Absolutely. And I think that's the case with a lot of your work as well. It's the, for every person that scrolls past it or flicks through it and perhaps it doesn't make that impact, but for the one person, like the lady of the example you give, that, takes it into the office, that could have been the difference between her leaving, her job, not leaving her job, hurting herself or not, not opening up to somebody else. I think what's really rare about you is your ability to articulate it as well. I've been loving some of the things we've been discussing then, and I wanted to ask you about some of the speaking work that you've done. So you say you operate as a keynote speaker from time to time, speaking on these leadership principles. How did that manifest itself? Because some people that exist in the world of being an artist or an illustrator is because they struggle to articulate it, but you clearly speak with such passion. How does that compare to your work as an illustrator?
Well, I'm a reluctant public speaker. Captain Mike Galliano, he's a retired fire captain out of the Seattle, Washington Fire Department. Really, it enticed me to come into a class with him probably 5 years ago. And I'd never really given public speaking a whole lot of thought at that point. So we did a class together. It was kind of a unique thing where we both spoke about leadership, and I would draw a live cartoon in front of the audience.
Wow.
And it's all about our passion. So his passion is clearly articulation. He can speak well. He speaks with such passion. And my passion and skill is drawing. One
of many.
So we kind of did that. And through the process of that, again, I love it. I love a challenge. And it was one of those things in life. I'm an introvert. I mean, I would much rather be sitting in a corner someplace with a sketchbook and not interacting with anyone, because I love the little world that I create for myself. And so standing up in front of people is a complete unnatural act for me.
It's the number one fear globally.
It exhausts me.
It is petrifying for people.
Even during this podcast, I'm speaking more words than I'll speak in the next 3 weeks.
It's exhausting, mate. Honestly, speaking for an hour, 2 hours, you engage. It's such an interactive, immersive experience, and it really does take it out of you. It's incredible.
So just knowing that this was something that scared me was enough of a motivation to, this is something that I want to try to get better at.
Yeah.
And so I would do these speaking engagements, which led to Chief Bobby Halton of Fire Engineering Magazine asking me to be the keynote of the 2019 FDIC. And
that got
the hell out of me. But I couldn't turn it down. I couldn't turn it down, because turning it down would be looking at my reflection and being afraid of actually doing and being up there in front of everyone. Yeah. So I actually had to do this to prove to myself that I wasn't going to succumb to that fear. And to be honest, as much as that scared the hell out of me, the fact that I didn't want my daughter to see me as a failure. I mean, my daughter is 27 years old now. I didn't want her to see me as a failure, someone who looked at a challenge and went, no, I just can't do that. I can't be in front of people. I can't speak like that. Having her in the audience that day, of 8,000 people in the audience being streamed worldwide, the only thing that I thought about was my daughter seeing me up there accomplishing something that she knew terrified me.
Yeah.
And that was my motivating factor.
Yeah, the example that sets for her. Otherwise you just become a hypocrite. You know what I mean? Saying, push yourself, challenge, uncomfortable things, really, go outside of your comfort zone. Hey, Dad, hey, Paul, you go for that. No, I'm not. No, that's not for me. That's not for me. That's outside my comfort zone. And you're like, yeah, that's the whole goddamn point.
Yeah, and and the funny, the hilarious part of that is that I worked so hard up to that point. In the last year leading up to that keynote, I was taking speaking engagements once a month. And it was all the practice. It was, the prep of getting up to that.
Yeah.
I have not been in front of an audience since. Really? I have not taken one speaking engagement since FDIC. It was like, okay, won the Super Bowl, won the championship. I'm done.
One for one.
I proved it to myself.
Knocked it out of the park.
I proved that I could do it, that I wouldn't throw up on stage. I'm done.
Hey, you've got to leave something for somebody else as well. You can't be the number one illustrator and the number one speaker as well. Come on, give everybody else a go. Come on.
And here's the thing, that I feel like that whatever I speak about, if I don't feel strongly about it, that I don't feel like it's something that's new and fresh, I'm not going to take people's money to come and see me speak. So I turn down these speaking assignments now because I don't feel like I have something new to say.
Huh?
If you want to see what I've been saying for the last 5 years, go watch the FDIC keynote. It's pretty much the same thing. So why am I going to go and charge you money to go to say the same damn thing in front of your conference?
We will put that
until
link.
I feel like I have something new and fresh
that
no one else is really saying, I probably won't be doing any more public speaking engagements because, it's not right. It's not fair.
Plus, I think you do such a great example of demonstrating what those values are and what those beliefs are through your artwork as well. That how that constantly evolves is your form of communication. So I suppose on that note, you've managed to articulate it wonderfully when you've done your speaking engagements and stuff like that. But through the artwork, what are some of those top 2 or 3 real leadership qualities that you see from the work that you've done, from the leaders of business, from the leaders of the fire department that you speak with? What are the things that you think are the most important, I suppose, that you perhaps draw about most and that you feel are the real non-negotiables for a leader?
Oh, it's easy. It's humility, honesty, and hard work.
Boom.
Those are the 3 things that I've always put, and those are the 3 things that I've judged everything that I've done on.
Yeah.
Do I approach it with humility? Am I being honest with myself? Am I being honest with the people who are going to see my work or my crew at the firehouse? And am I working hard enough to earn that? And I judge everything I do based on those 3 things. And I think whether you are a new firefighter coming in, whether you're a new officer or you're making the stuff up to a chief officer, those 3 things, even though they're always evolving and always changing to the situation, because when I first became a firefighter, it was, okay, I need to come at this job with humility. I need to learn. I need to shut up, listen, learn everything I can. And by the time I became an officer, it was, I need to come to this with humility and understand that I am there for my crew. They're not there for me. This is not my ego trip. This is something where I need to learn from them and get to know them. I need to understand their family dynamics. I understand what are their backgrounds, because I have an artistic and marketing background.
Yeah.
I'm totally useless if someone's electrical panel is art.
Yes.
I could draw you a hell of an illustration of it, but I know nothing about electricity. But I had a guy on my crew that what he did aside from the firehouse was he was an electrician.
Yeah.
I'd have been a fool to put my ego in front of him and try to go in and go, yeah, well, that's the circuit A. No.
Yeah.
No, everyone
so many people do
bullshit.
That. So many people do that.
Absolutely, because they don't come at it with, and there's where the honesty part comes in. To be honest with yourself, to go, you know what, I don't know this, but I've got a guy on my crew that's really good at this. Here's how we're going to accomplish this goal, because you're the one that knows this role.
Yeah.
I'm the one that's going to get on the radio and go, hey, we're back in service. Exactly. That's my role today.
Yeah. If it goes well or it doesn't go well, you'll take responsibility. You're not trying to push that onto somebody else. But I haven't got to be right here. This is not my, I'll make the overall decision, but you're the knowledge, and having that humility, I think you speak so
clearly. And I guess, and the kind of an underlayer of the honesty part is that accountability. Because again, I've made decisions that have went wrong. Luckily, no one was ever hurt for those bad decisions. But it was enough to get me an ass chewing by the fire chief.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'm going to do is go in and, hey, firefighter A came in and you know what? I trusted him. He didn't do his job. It's not my fault. No, I'm the one that comes in and says, you know what? I made this call. We did this. We did this. Not he did this, but we did this.
Yeah.
I made this decision. I'm the one that's at fault. On the flip side of this, if he comes in and does a fantastic job, that's where I'm going to come up and say, you know what? Look what he did.
Yeah.
He stepped up. He took control of the situation. I'm just the guy with the radio.
Yeah.
And I want everyone to know what he did because now I'm building him up to my level. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Because now, like I said, I've been retired for a year and a half. And I like to think that some of the officers that have come up behind me have learned something from me.
Yeah. And are still able to now through the work that you do as well. Having only so very recently retired, what are some of the big changes that you see from when you first started in the service to now? And is there anything you really missed that you didn't think you would?
Oh, wow. I think just the technology is different. That we kind of hit a spurt there of about 10 or 15 years with the technology of the gear changing and how, we knew that the textures and the type of material that we're using could be better. Everything from the radios that we were using to the biggest thing, obviously, is thermal imaging cameras.
Yeah.
Those type of things that I saw kind of weave in and out, even, the evolution of the SCBA that we're using. But, the biggest thing that I miss is I miss the calls and I miss my guys.
Yeah. Because a lot of the work you do now, a lot of the work you do is so, so you're the natural introvert. So this is a wonderful time for you to be able to fully immerse yourself in the work that you do. And you do it so wonderfully, and we're all grateful for that. But there's that aspect that you're not getting the engagement with the guys all the time, with the team, because it's so obvious in your work that that's such a big part of you. You've got your finger on the pulse of how the firefighter feels. And now to be removed from it must feel strange for you. Yeah.
It is. It really is. And I mean, and I still have those connections. Unfortunately, around the same time that I retired, a few months later, COVID became our new reality. And so it wasn't just being able to go up to the firehouse, sit down at the kitchen table, and have a cup of coffee. It was on total lockdown. They didn't want their guys exposed to the exterior.
Yeah.
And even though COVID, all the tragedy, I guess I don't want to make light of all the tragedy that we've had through this.
No, yeah.
But as an artist, COVID has been a godsend.
Oh, God.
Because it has been an excuse as this introvert not to interact with anyone.
Oh, this sounds horrible. It's such the noise and the bullshit of the world. It's such a guilty and selfish thing to say.
Oh, no. But from an artist standpoint,
yeah,
being able to say, okay, I don't have to go outside. I don't have to do it. I don't have to interact with anyone. I can just stay in my little cocoon.
Yeah.
The hardest part has been breaking out of that now that here in the U.S. we're starting to open up again. That I have to go outside and I have to be with people and meet people. And I forgot how to do that. I forgot how to wear pants, I think. So
I was going to say, people don't have the benefit of the visual, but I love that you wore your birthday suit for today. I feel like it's a nice little gift to me, you got
to take me out for a nice dinner first.
Oh, Now, we're talking a lot, especially in a lot of your work, a lot of it says about values, habits, behaviors, and stuff like that. So I wanted to ask you personally, what have been the 1, 2, 3 real non-negotiable habits or behaviors that you believe have given you the most benefit, even in most recent history, the past 1 to 3 years? What values, what behaviors, what habits have you got into that have really helped?
Right. Well, I think, again, for me, it's the purging of whatever my mind may be thinking of to what I need to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was the same no matter what I do, even at the firehouse. My gear had to be a certain way. I would always put my car keys in the exact same place. On duty days, I would come in to make sure that, the thermal imager was charged up. I made sure that everything that was my responsibility was taken care of. Those were habits that I had to get into. I would get in and out of my car the exact same way.
Yeah.
Try to park in the exact same spot. I mean, those are all little idiosyncrasies, but they were all things that were like, okay,
absolutely.
It was lining me up to focus on what I needed to do. All these are things that get me aligned.
You hear that with like great science. I mean, Albert Einstein was a typical example of, you would wear the same, outfit every day because you're expending capacity. People say, oh, time is limited. Yes, time is limited. But you know what's more is your attention. And now in such a noisy world of social media and everything else, time and attention is such a crucial one. And I feel like that perhaps is one of the biggest issues of people making any tangible progress in some of their passions in life, is because they're so distracted, but you seem to have a massive a really strong focus and discipline, but it does require you to detach. It's a struggle. Yeah,
it's a struggle. It's a struggle because I mean, sometimes my brain is like a herd of cats, and I'm always trying to, and it's a constant. Okay, come over here, Mittens, come here, and it's like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I have an addiction to, a lot of people have an addiction to social media, that sort of thing. For me, it's email. I'm constantly checking email because that's my main communication between clients.
Yeah.
So, I'm watching a movie and I pick up my phone. I'm not even thinking about it, but I pick up my phone and check my email to see if there's a West Coast client or somebody that's out of a time zone that's trying to get me at 8 p.m. at night.
That's it.
And I mean, to the detriment of, my relationship with my wife at times.
Yeah.
Even, on vacation, holidays, whatever. I'm always checking email. And that is a distraction that I try to eliminate. And it's still a struggle.
It's such a difficult discipline.
Things like that, little things.
Yeah. Disciplines like that, I find, are the real big game changers in life now. But how have you gotten better at saying no to things? Because, I mean, even like annoying people from the UK, hey, Paul, come on my podcast, people like that. You must, as you become more and more successful, that's kind of like the curse, isn't it? Because, I mean, I'm lucky enough not to struggle with it at this point in time, but you must have constant demands from people. You're a nice guy. How do you say no? How otherwise, you would be single. You would have nobody, because you'd just be trying to please everybody and forgetting about your family. How do you say no?
Yeah. Saying no is a problem. I still struggle with that as well, because especially with nonprofits, I get a lot of requests for, hey, we have a sick firefighter, we have his child is sick, whatever. We're going to have a benefit, trying to raise some money. Could you send some books or prints? you know, and those are 3, 4, 5 times a week. And it would be a full-time job if I honored all of them. And it's so hard to say no because your heartstrings pull. Like, I know that I can help raise a little money for this family, but, you know, I'm going to be broke if I keep doing this.
Exactly.
So I've learned a little bit of, okay, I'm gonna give so many prints this year, so many books this year to different charities, different benefits like that. On the freelance side, when someone's paying you to do a job, it's a whole lot easier to say no. Yeah. It's either a job you don't want to do, it's a job you're really not suited for, that they think you are, but you know you're not. Yeah, seriously. You know, I mean, it's so funny. I just got an email yesterday. A guy's like, "Hey, I really love your work. I want to hire you, but I have to keep all this on a budget. I can't pay you much. But just think of the exposure you're going to get." Well, that's an immediate no. Yeah. You know, it's like, you know what? You want an amateur. You don't want a professional at this point.
I think it was a story about. I heard it. I'm gonna get this so wrong, but the overarching story from it was, I think it was like Picasso or something. He was sat in a cafe, and he's drawing on a napkin. And he's drawing while he's just drinking his coffee or whatever. And he goes up to leave, and this lady sees he's about to throw it in the bin. And she's like, "Oh, can I have that? It's amazing, you know." And he's like, "Absolutely, you know, £50,000. And she's like, "What are you on about? It's taken you 20 seconds to draw it." He's like, "No, that's taken me 30 years." You know, and people will say this to you, they're like, "Well, I thought you were a nice guy, Paul. Why can't you just do this for free?" And you're like, "I've spent 50 years developing this skill set, and it's not you being a dick, but you're a bit like,
oh, absolutely,
you know, that must be
it's
so
putting
hard.
value to what you do.
Yeah,
it's putting value to what you do. You know, it's no different than being in the fire service, you know, to the public eye. Yeah, you know, we are always trying to do things to make sure that we look great in the public eye, because it's the public that are paying for our services. Yeah, so they're paying for the equipment, they're paying for our salaries. All this stuff is coming from the public. That's why we keep the truck so clean. We want them to know that we're taking care of the equipment you just bought us. Yeah. This is not my fire truck. This is yours. Same with the firehouse. We leave the doors open. You're welcome to come in. Sure, we want the kid. I have a lot of stuff to do today, but yeah, I will help your kid get in and off the truck because I understand that there's value to you placing value on what it is that we do. Yeah. There's no difference of whether you're in art, whether you're in the fire service, military, police, EMS. Again, if people don't see value in what you provide, they're going to devalue what they perceive. The email I got from this guy yesterday, he is devaluing what I do right from the beginning because he wants my services. He just doesn't want to pay a lot for it, but he thinks there's value in his publicity, and that that's somehow going to be valuable to me. Well, it's not. No. And so, you know, that's where the communication breakdown really happens. But, you know, again, I'm in a position where I can turn down clients like that. There are a lot of artists who can't, you know, and you find yourself working for people like that.
And you do provide a lot of stuff for free as well. You know, I mean, people that see all of your stuff across your website, your social media, they will use it. They will, you know, rebrand it and use it to demonstrate a message. I imagine very few, if any, people send you a payment for using your artistry. That's got to be difficult sometimes. And
here's the thing. If you're using this as an instructional tool, I typically let people do it for free. My only requirement is you don't change anything on the art. You don't change the message. You don't remove my signature. You don't add.
Do you have that? Have you had people remove your signature?
Yeah.
I don't know why they would, though.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It happens all the time. Really? And one of the nice things, though, is that now everyone knows your work. That I'll have somebody shoot me a thing on Facebook or shoot me a text saying, "Hey, this speaker's using your illustration," and they've taken a shot off the screen, and I'm going, "Hey, you need to stop that." It's the same way when I first started out that I wasn't all that well known. That I would see my stuff show up on T-shirts.
Oh man,
it was all this stuff. So having the popularity within the fire service helps a little bit like that. Yeah, you can't stop any. You can't stop all of it. No. You know, you can only mitigate what you can. But the thing is that, again, my work is meant to make a difference. My work is to help educate or start that conversation.
The power
so
of it is.
If an instructor wants to use it to make their point, that's what it's about.
You could create all of this artwork and put it in a room somewhere, and it wouldn't have the powerful impact that it has today. But that's just strange. You know, it's surreal. I don't know how I would feel about it because it is incredible work. But it only has the power. This is the irony. Only through allowing people to see it and exposing people to it, that's what creates its power. Do you know what I mean? It's powerful because people see it and they go, "Jesus, that really hit me." But they wouldn't have had the change if they hadn't have seen it. but they won't see it if it's not out there for people to view. So it's a strange circle that we go around. But I appreciate.
I mean, these are like children to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I put so much into the creation of these that when someone does steal these and they do change them, it's like me taking a photograph of one of your children and renaming them and saying, "Oh, this is my child."
Yeah.
That's what it feels like to an artist when they see their work stolen.
That's cool.
And people just don't get that, again, because they're not applying value to it.
Yeah.
And maybe if I charge $10,000 for the use of one of my cartoons, the value would change. I don't know.
Yeah, you should do.
It's kind of a constant battle out there. But that's the new world of digital as well. Is you got to put your work out there in the digital form.
I know.
But you open yourself up to
Do you see this with, I had an interesting conversation the other day where they were talking about graffiti, where somebody will graffiti an image on a wall or on a building, and then the person that owns the building will sell the wall, and they'll make hundreds of thousands of pounds for it. And you're like, the artist doesn't get anything for it, and you're like, well, I'm not sure how I feel about that. That's that's strange. And it
is. And even now with the new NFTs, and where you can actually sell the digital rights to a digital image, it's a world that I don't quite understand yet either. But
I can't get my head around it.
But is it a fad? Is it something that's real? Is it something in its infancy, or is it something that's going to go bust?
I don't know.
But I mean, as an artist and a business person, it's something that I'm keenly interested in. Is there another avenue for revenue, keep the studio lights on?
Absolutely, brother.
That I'm missing. So I don't know. We'll see where that goes too. But again, technology and different things are always evolving, and I think it's we kind of revisit what we were talking about with some of the other artists.
Yeah, you've got to be an eternal student.
You got to be an eternal student, and you've always got to be able to adapt.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you for all of the artists out there, because you've said about some of the fantastic resources you've got and the sort of the technology you use now. But take your mind back to when you were first starting out, and some of the artists out there now who are struggling to get money together, struggling to keep the lights on, as you've said a few times there. What has been the best sort of purchase you have made, or you would make with with $100 as an upcoming artist? What is the best purchase that you would make?
Oh, the best purchase you can make is, in my mind, is to have sketchbooks. It's a menial expense.
Mm.
But to be able to have a white page, that open canvas in front of you, and there's not a lot of expense to it. I get asked all the time, what's the advice you always give young artists? It is to draw every single day. It's the same advice I give to old artists.
Yeah.
Draw every single day. Because it's that creative process that keep the flow going.
Yeah.
Because we talked about creativity kind of having a tide. There's an ebb and a flow to it. Mm. Well, you can also dam up that tide. Yeah. And you won't get any at all because you're not creating. You put yourself into some type of creative funk.
Yeah.
And sometimes you do that as well. Mm. But the way out of that is to just draw. And you know what? And I could just be scribbling.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times we're at a restaurant or something and I'm on a napkin and I'm just doing circles or lines. And I will see something come about just the way the circles and the lines started to form.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's an image. And that image turns into a story, and that story turns into an illustration, which turns into a topic. It really is. Yeah. I mean, and that's that receptive part I was talking about with the artist when you're always on.
Yeah.
It's because you're always looking for something. You're always soaking in those type of emotions, those type of textures and lighting and the way people move and act and go about their day.
Yeah. But there's something about
all
that.
Stuff you store in your head.
Yeah. It must be so frustrating for people that do want to find the secret, because half the time you must just feel like you're wandering around in the dark with your hand. You just need to keep going, and then you bump into these, the lightning strikes. But for people that are like, yeah, but whereabouts in the dark do I need to go, Paul? And you're like, just everywhere. Just keep wandering around, just keep going. But that's so tough for people that probably struggling, really. So it's perseverance. Get used to the fact that a lot of what you do might not be great, and you've just got to keep pushing it out.
And that's why and I know you can't see anything with this, but the sketchbook that I carry, when I get an idea, and again, even if I'm in a conference or I'm in a classroom, that's how I take notes. Yeah. I don't write out notes. they're series of drawings, because that's how my brain, formulates ideas. But I've got 4 volumes of these black sketchbooks that I keep with me everywhere. And every cartoon and illustration that I've created has all started with this little 1 inch by 1 inch scribbles. And it all starts with a couple of circles where the head will be. And then I draw a line for the spine. And then another one. And it's funny how the art will start to come alive just in these little bitty scribbles. And I will discover something like a hand gesture that I totally didn't even intend to happen because my hand was just moving fast. And it's like, that's an interesting line. That's an interesting shape that I'm going to explore. And then when I start to blow it out to an illustration,
you should have them reprinted and released, because I'll bet. I mean, the actual books themselves, one day, whenever you choose to put them up for sale, I mean, I would certainly be bidding on them. But to have them made as, volume 1 of Paul Coombs' notebook, this oh man, that would be just. I'm OCD, so they are numbered. Oh mate, in their raw form, they would be absolutely amazing. When we look back at the notebooks of Epictetus and people like that, and the memoirs that when they were just doodled, people's diaries and stuff like that. Man, your sketchbook, your notepad, that would be the one. Absolutely love it. Yeah. I wanted to finish just by asking, we've spoke about the books there. Obviously, there's the website, there's the social media. But for people that have not been able to engage with you up until this point, where's the best place to find you? Because I've been seeing your work for so long before I managed to get in contact. And what's the best way for people to see, the best examples of you?
Probably the best place is the starting portal for all this would just be my website. And it's just paulcombsart.com. And from there, you can contact me. You can see a lot of the different work that I do as far as the industrial side, the fire cartoons that I create. The books are there that they have, links to where they can be purchased. There's a lot of, that sort of thing out there. The different illustration projects that I've done, some more of the fine art type things that kind of take the whimsical style a step further and are a lot more detailed and painterly. So the website is a portal for all of that. But just simply for my fire cartoons, if you just follow fireengineering.com, at least 3 or 4 times a month, they're putting my work up there. And
I can't believe, man, there's just the volume that create is relentless. That's, I just can't believe lightning strikes as often as it does. With something like that,
don't question it. I don't question it.
But
I don't know where the lightning comes from. I'm just glad it comes.
Don't question it.
We don't speak of things. We don't speak of these things
without jinxing it. I mean, you're so young, 55. And I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, brother. But I sincerely look forward to enjoying your artwork for another 30 years at least, my good man. So. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. As long as I have something fresh to say, they'll keep coming. But
beautiful.
There'll come a day to where I don't feel like they're relevant. And just like with public speaking, that'll be the end of it. And I'll retire as a volume and say, you know what, there it is. There's a time capsule of the work I created during this time, and I'm moving on to other things. And
that's the way I see it.
Again, I'm not going to create these just to create them. So as long as I feel like they're making a difference out there, I'll keep doing them.
They most definitely are, mate. Paul, thank you so much, my man, for taking time out of your busy day. Hopefully this is giving you some creative juices. Hopefully it's not being a poor investment of your time, because I know how valuable it is, and I know you have loved ones in your life who would rather be with you than on the phone to me in the UK. But thank you so much, my good man, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. Send my love to the family, all right?
All right, thank you. It's been an honor.
Take care, brother. See you soon.
See ya.
Well, there you have it, boys and girls. I told you that was not going to disappoint. Absolutely love getting that time with Paul. It's so reassuring when you get an opportunity to meet somebody like that, somebody behind the artwork, and they actually turn out to be even better than the art themselves. Do always be careful about meeting your heroes, because they might just let you down, but this definitely was not the case. Paul, the consummate professional, he was interesting, gregarious, likable, sociable. I hope you got a lot from today's episode. I hope it gave you that peek behind the curtain into the mind of the genius, into the mind of the creator, the artist, the visionary. That is Paul Coombs, Drawn by Fire. And don't forget as well, we spoke about Sprinkles the Fire Dog in there. That's Paul's latest book. Go and check it out if you're looking for that birthday present, if you're looking for that Christmas present. Sprinkles the Fire Dog. Don't forget, if you did enjoy today's episode, don't be selfish. Make sure you share it with somebody. Send them the link, ping it in the WhatsApp, ping it in the DM. Go, hey, this was pretty awesome. Learn some more about Paul Coombs. What, you don't know who he is? Oh my God, where have you been? Go and check it out. Jump over to Instagram, jump over to our YouTube, get on the email links. You can check that in the notes below. That's where you're going to hear first. And until next time, stay happy, stay healthy, stay hungry, and I will see you soon right here on the Firefighters Podcast.